All right, everyone. I'm excited to introduce you to my two guests today. Another, it's going to be amazing. I got two guests. Usually I only have one guest, guys. So today it's double the fun. And we got Jim Colucci, Frank DeCaro. Oh, shit. DeCaro.
No, DeCaro was right. You nailed
DeCaro.
it.
I
I
did
was
say
so
it.
impressed.
Frank DeCaro. All right, there we go. We are diving deep. These they're both authors, both pop culture pundits. I'd list off all their books, but then I'd have to. We won't have time for the interview. We'll get to the books as we get to the books. But they have covered Will and Grace, The Golden Girls, All in the Family, The Love Boat, Disco, Drag. I mean, Dead People's Cookbooks. I mean, it's like everything. We got. It's like there's so much. What's up, guys? How you doing?
I like the Dead People Cookbook bringing up the rear. I like that. I feel good about that. So
all going to end up in that cookbook someday.
Not soon, I hope.
I feel like I'd like to go over Betty White lines first. It's a video that I found that you both did, and the funny thing about it was like, oh, and she's 88.
Yeah, I mean, can you believe that was how long ago that was? I mean, now that she would be 102 or going on 103, so 15 years ago. Can you believe it?
God. We had such a good time making that video, and it was a spoof of that song White Lines, which was about cocaine, of course, but we did it about Betty White lines, meaning the great lines we've heard her say on television. And so that was what it was. And Jim decided, I think I came up with the title, and then that was it. I stepped away, and Jim wrote the whole song. And so I was, we were tickled. And our friend Craig Otto, who's a filmmaker, decided to make this video with us, and he's the third Golden Girl in it.
And he's so talented as a filmmaker.
Crazy talented.
We, of course, you can tell. Maybe you can't tell that we did it with like literally zero budget. I think we must have spent a couple $100 on the whole thing on props, and he made it look so amazing. So yeah, that video went viral because it looked so good, and it was on like Showbiz Tonight and a bunch of other.
That's like the Today Show too, or something. But I have to say, back in the day, viral might have meant hundreds of thousands of views. It's not like today where it's like, I put it up an hour ago. It's got 7 million views. It's not. It was not that.
TikTok.
Yeah,
put that thing on TikTok.
We should. But it was pretty funny to record this cover version and then do it. And hopefully we were one of the reasons that helped get Betty White as the host of Saturday Night Live, right? I mean, it was before that.
It was during the campaign to get her on Saturday Night Live. So that's why it's very timely when it says 88 years. She had just turned 88 that January. There had been all of this groundswell of stuff that she was having this comeback where she had that Snickers commercial and she got honored at the Golden Globes all in January and February. And that's when we made the video. We made it in like March and April. And then in May, she did SNL. So yeah, it was all leading up to that.
At that moment, did you know you'd someday sit in her living room with her dog at your feet?
I'd already been in her living room.
That already happened at that point?
Yeah.
Oh, never mind.
No, I did my interviews for the Golden Girls book in 2006. Plus, I had interviewed Betty before that as well.
Yeah, I thought it was hilarious. And it's funny. Betty White is one of those actresses that's always been old. Like I was watching an old Dean Martin roast, and they were all making fun of Betty White for being 50.
Can you imagine?
Well, 50 was decrepit back in the day,
I know, but she would go on to double that.
Yes, that was half her career. That was like the midway
point. It wasn't even the midway point. It was the beginning, because really she only went on the Mary Tyler Moore show after she turned 50. And so that's where we all know her from, Mary Tyler Moore and after. Although she did all this incredible work in live television in LA and she did some game show stuff, people don't know her from that stuff. We know her from Mary Tyler Moore, Golden Girls, Hot in Cleveland, the movies like The Proposal. That's all the later stuff.
Yeah, well, and a little Match Game, I have to say.
Okay, but that was also in her 50s. Yeah. Those were also in her 50s.
But it was amazing to me that you've sat and we've both interviewed someone who's on a stamp. It's like she's going to be on a stamp next year. So it's that you don't get that too often. Where someone you've interviewed is that much of an icon.
I interviewed someone who was on a panel, was at the Smithsonian Institute, and one of her costumes from one of her shows was in the Smithsonian Institute. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God, this is amazing.
Wait, who was that?
I knew you were going to say that, and I didn't even know I was going to bring it up. I'll have to bring it up. I'm going to just have to edit out you asking.
Okay. Well, it's okay. I couldn't remember the name Ben Platt again today. Every time I do an interview and I want to mention Ben Platt, I can't think of Ben Platt. And I'll be in the shower, go, Ben Platt. You know, it's just for some reason.
What makes you think of Ben Platt when you shower?
Bubbles.
I thought we were going to get an intimate confession there.
No, there is truly no intimate confession about it. No, he plays the Ethel Merman disco album before his concerts, one or two tracks. So I mentioned that in an interview I did, and I could not come up with the name, but the interviewer knew, so it was okay. But
very cool, very cool. All right, so obviously you have. I'm assuming you both love the Golden Girls, but like as we all do. But Jim, I know you've written 2 books.
Yes.
On the Golden Girls, the Q Guide to the Golden Girls and Golden Girls Forever. So,
right.
What goes
the
into
New York Times bestseller, The New Golden Girls Forever. I have to say that. Sorry, I'm by contract. I have to say the New York Times bestseller, Golden Girls Forever. Go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, I was remiss to leave that off. There was so what makes you decide? How do you decide? Because you've also done All in the Family, which we'll talk about, Will and the Grace, doing the Love Boat now. You know, like what makes you decide this is something I'm just gonna go head first into?
Well, it's really the Golden Girls, even though it wasn't my first book, was the impetus for writing books at all, because having grown up and being old before the internet, when there'd be a new show like the Golden Girls, which premiered when I was just turning 16, there was nothing but like the TV Guide question and answer column to get information about shows. There were very few places. There was no internet. You just rely on whatever you could read in your newspaper.
I was going to say, yeah, a Parade magazine,
you know,
profile,
and they'd all be so short. And then occasionally a book would be written about a TV show, and you could get the book. But a lot of times the books were also quickly and were cheaply written, or and weren't very good. And so I always, when I started writing about entertainment, writing articles for magazines like TV Guide, I always wanted to do longer form and really do a deep dive into a show I love. And the first show that would be the Golden Girls. So I had a book proposal for the Golden Girls ready to go out to publishers with when I was approached to write a book about Will and Grace. And I said, my second favorite show? Yes. So I ended up doing Will and Grace first, but that was great because it gave me then the credibility to go out and pitch a Golden Girls book. And the reason there ended up being 2 Golden Girls books is because, I mean, we are still not done with ageism and misogyny in our culture, but I do think things have gotten better even since the turn of the millennium when I'm talking about originally. Because when I first went out with Golden Girls book proposals in about 2004, so many publishers would say, why would we want to publish a book about a show about old ladies that it's been off the air for, at this point, 10 years? Now it's been off the air for many more than 10 years. And so I would get that reaction. There would be that built-in ageism and misogyny, and also publishing people love to brag they know nothing about television. So there'd be a snobbery. And it took a while. And the reason I ended up writing the Q Guide first is because the most amenable to publishing a book was a gay and lesbian publisher, LGBT publisher, Allison Books. And they had this new guidebook series called the Q Guides, which would talk about LGBT aspects of shows. There was another line that was about vacation spots, blah, 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 but about TV shows in this case. And so the Q Guide is a guide to the show that really highlights the LGBT elements of the show, which there are many. When you actually go back and count, there are many episodes that have a gay storyline or at least a gay joke or a gay character. It's a lot more than you think.
Well, it was an early example of what we now call queering the culture.
Yes.
You know, where you really are like, you look at something that's mainstream and meant for everyone, and you explain why it's so important to the queer community. And that was the Q in the Q Guides, you know,
right.
But 20 some years ago. Right?
Yeah. Oh gosh, this was 2004. So
20 years ago.
Yeah, 20 years ago.
Wasn't there an original gay character in the
Yes.
beginning?
There was in the pilot, Coco, the gay houseboy. And there's a whole story behind Coco about how actually NBC claims, and I honestly find it a little hard to believe, but the executives told me this directly, so I quoted them. See if you believe it, that they actually commissioned the show to have a gay character. And the reason why I find that hard to believe is because just about the same time in the mid '80s, during the AIDS crisis, during a particularly homophobic time and a backlash against the community because of AIDS, gays were not exactly very popular in pop culture, and there were other shows that were considered themselves daring by writing even a gay guest star character, and then the character would often be played very stereotypically. It was really the dark ages, and so the idea that NBC specifically said, "And we want a gay character," sounds to me like it's somebody doing some revisionist history, but the executives swear that's true. The reason why it could be true is because the idea for the Golden Girls actually arose from NBC, which is also atypical, because if you know about television, you know that writers, creators usually come to the network or to a studio with a pitch for a show, with a script. They have to sell it to the network. So it usually originates with the writer. In this case of the Golden Girls, everything about it was atypical. The fact that it was a show that got on the air about old ladies was atypical and still would be today, unfortunately. But the idea actually arose from NBC, where they had done a presentation and they had Selma Diamond and Doris Roberts doing some shtick at the presentation. And they said, look at this. These old ladies are funny. Let's do a show about old ladies. And it kind of took off from there, and they brought it to Susan Harris. So it could be true that they said to Susan Harris, hey, put a gay character in there. But what ended up happening was, ironically, another LGBT favorite and a huge ally of the community, Estelle Getty, who was not supposed to be a regular character, who was supposed to be a recurring character, and she appeared in the pilot, was so good in the pilot and stole the show so much that everyone agreed, looking at the pilot, okay, she needs to stay full time. And now that there are 5 of them, this house is getting too crowded. There are too many voices to service. This guy needs to go. He didn't really have anything to do. And then, you think about it too. If they're really struggling old ladies who need to live together financially because of financial reasons, how are they affording this guy staying there? There were a whole other justifications, a whole other list of justifications for getting rid of Coco. So Coco got mostly cut from the pilot. There's a little bit of him still there that they couldn't cut. But yeah, he disappeared. So it started out on an LGBT footing, and the show continued on that path ever since, even without Coco.
They made up for it, certainly.
Yeah, they did.
You mentioned very quickly, though, Selma Diamond and
Doris Roberts.
So the bailiff from Night Court and the mother from Everybody Loves Raymond.
Well, who at the time was the secretary on Remington Steele.
Right, but I mean, for looking back now, were the input there, a little bit of shtick at a company presentation, at a network presentation, is what led to the Golden Girls, which I think is one of those pop culture tidbits that you're just like, wait a minute, and then you find, but
and there are so many reasons why that would never happen today, and almost really wouldn't have happened then either. And that's where you have to give credit to some of the visionary executives who were at NBC at the time, because believe me, I seldom use the words visionary and executives together.
Not in the same sentence.
Not in the same sentence. But in this case, Brandon Tartikoff and Warren Littlefield and some executives who were there really, they saw magic, and they said, why shouldn't we have more of this? And that's what executives should be doing, but they're often fear-based and they don't. In this case, they were willing to buck the rules. Hey, old ladies on TV, it hasn't been done. Let's do it. And they did, and it worked.
They were like the last of the impresarios.
There have been other impresarios. There have been other people who have good taste and have gotten some shows on the air against the odds. Not since then. But it's more common for networks to follow a fear pattern and not be very visionary. So, yeah, it all had to happen in the exact same order, and it had to happen with those stars being funny in front of the right people. It's a miracle it ever happened.
A miracle anything ever happens in show business, that anything works out and is good and they allow it to happen. It's kind of amazing.
I mean, it seems like when you look back, well, first let me say, actually, I wanted to say it's funny that they were hesitant to even let you write the book, or that you had trouble finding someone. Because like when you think about, to me, like the Golden Girls, it's so still. I mean, like revered. I mean, it's like it seems like it would be a no-brainer to write a
Well,
book
that was
like
the
that.
publishing people. The publishing people were hesitant because publishing people love to, as I said, brag about how little they know about TV. And TV books are generally not given full support of a publisher. They kind of almost do them like they have to, and then they throw them in the back of the Barnes and Noble in the section that's usually in the back of the store, and they don't promote them, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that TV books don't sell, which is one of the mantras that publishing people have had for a while. And so I think that you add on top of that the fact that they're not crazy that they even have a TV book publishing division, and then you add, hey, by the way, this book's about old ladies. If you didn't watch the show, you think it's just about old ladies and it went off the air 10 years ago. Hey, how about now? So, it just was, again, a lack of vision, a lack of understanding, built-in biases that we all grew up with. And you just have to find the right people who get it.
Well, and the vaulted position that the Golden Girls hold now
wasn't true
much. But it's part of it, certainly not all of it, but part of it is because of Jim's book, taking it seriously and people connecting on cruises and at cons and really, I mean, I can't think of another sitcom that could handle a whole con by itself.
It's hard. I mean, you think of Star Trek and other shows that are genre than not sitcoms. But yes, I mean, the thing that I saw, one of the reasons that I wanted to do the Golden Girls book, other than it being my favorite show and I would get to meet all the ladies, which was my reason number one. But reason number two is that writing for TV Guide and other places and writing for television myself, I can see what's popular, and I kind of get a drumbeat out there of what's popular. And I was amazed because I thought all through the 90s when I watched the Golden Girls on Lifetime, I thought I'm the only person who really cares about this show about old ladies. I was buying into the negativity. Why? It's so funny that they have it on Lifetime and I'm watching it constantly and loving it so much. And then I would hear other people saying the same thing. And I think, wait a minute, I'm not the only one watching this on Lifetime. And then you'd read statistics or ratings from Lifetime about how it was such a high rated program for them. And I saw, wait a minute, this show is not dying off in popularity after it went off in first run, which is the usual pattern. Usually shows are popular while they're on the air in first run. And then as their audiences fade away, some of them sometimes die off, the shows kind of go down. It has a half-life, a natural decline. Golden Girls wasn't doing that. It was actually going up. And the only other show I could ever think of that had done that had fans who were not even born during the first run, was I Love Lucy. And I mean, to this day, I think I would add a few more shows to the list because of streaming. We now have, I know my young nieces who are 18 have watched The Office and Friends and stuff like that, and they weren't around for the first run. So we now have a few more shows to put on that list. But at the time that I was pitching this in 2004, one of the things I would say in the pitch are there are only two sitcoms in history that I can say have more fans now than they did then: Lucy and Golden Girls. Don't you want to be part of that?
Interestingly, they tried to bring Lucy back during this, didn't they? Like, wasn't her last sitcom part of it because of the success of the Golden Girls? Or like, oh,
partly, it had something to do with the Golden Girls. Lucy was kicking the tires on doing a new sitcom in the 80s, and Aaron Spelling, who produced Love Boat and a bunch of other shows, but never comedies, always, I mean, Love Boat was comedic, but they were always 1 hour and mostly action. Aaron Spelling always wanted to do a sitcom, and he knew Lucy through social circles. And so they had a deal, let's do a sitcom. And it was Life with Lucy, their show, ended up premiering in 1986, 1 year after the Golden Girls. But as they were developing it, Lucy said Lucy was friends with Betty through their mothers, and she was friends with Bea. They did the MAME film together, so she knew the ladies. And so Lucy said, as they were developing Life with Lucy, I want to see how it's done today. I haven't done a multicam in 15 years at that point. And so she went to a Golden Girls taping, and legend has it that she sat in the front row and that the audience wouldn't laugh until they saw her laugh. So it actually was a distraction in that taping because the audience was so obsessed with the fact that Lucy was sitting with them that they were reacting properly to the material. They were waiting to see first if Lucy would and then they would laugh.
What was that? Okay, thank you.
A Lucy laugh.
Okay.
At that point with the deep voice. And so, so there is a connection. And they actually wanted Lucy to go on the Golden Girls and make a guest spot. And they wrote a role that they offered to her. And if you know the show, it's in the first season. The role ended up being played by Polly Holliday. It's Rose's sister, Lily, who's gone blind. and they offered it to Lucy. But the thing is, Lucy had just done the TV movie Stone Pillow, playing a homeless woman, taking a dramatic turn, and she was very proud of herself. However, her fans were annoyed that she did something non-comedic. And so she vowed that the next thing she did.
Wait. So Stone Pillow is not a comedy,
believe it or not.
I laugh when I watch it. Sorry.
So Lucy vowed that the next thing she did had to be really funny, and the role of Rose's blind sister. Lily didn't get the jokes in the episode. She wasn't the one with the punchlines. It was everybody else. Lily was just the very serious catalyst for conversation. So Lucy turned down the role. So we never got her on the Golden Girls, but she ended up being inspired to do her own show the next season.
And we did binge watch Life with Lucy, and it's not nearly as bad as people would have you imagine. It's not up to
no, it's not up
the
to
earlier shows.
No, it's not up to I Love Lucy. It's probably about the same as some of the later Lucy.
Maybe Here's Lucy.
But
not the Lucy Show. It's the Lucy Show is better. But so this is the kind of arguments. This is what we argue about in our house. It's like, the Lucy Show is Viv is the only sidekick that counts. You know, that's us.
So yeah. So I mean, well, I guess the Golden Girls in a way brought us together. Marsha Posner Williams introduced us.
Yes.
She worked on the Golden Girls. She's wonderful. She's amazing.
We love her.
We love her. And yeah, that was one. Every time I write one of these books, yeah, I get at least one great friendship out of it, possibly more. And it's not necessarily the person you think it's going to be going in, because I didn't know Marsha at all going in, so I didn't expect to hit it off as well as I did with her. She was only a name on the screen at first to me. You know, you fantasize that you're going to be Arthur's best friend, or you go to whatever. And although I loved B and I had a great day with her, there are just some people who really are as much of a fan of the thing that they worked on, and also have an appreciation for its greatness. And I bond with them in that, and then other things. And I've had angels like that, I always call them, on every book. There were others on the Golden Girls. Lex Passeris, one of the directors of the show, and Isabel O'Maro, some wonderful people who really are like show historians, because even at the time they knew they were onto something special. And that doesn't always happen in television, because there's usually the pressure to just get this episode done, get it out the door. We got another one to do. It's like cranking out the sausage. And sometimes you don't have a perspective that you can step back and say, wait, we're making something special here. But luckily with the Golden Girls, and just about every show that I've written a book about, there has been at least one person that I've then become friends with who really has the same love for the show as I do.
Yeah, I've kind of had that. I'll meet someone in the process, and I'll be like, I have to be friends with this person. And so I had, with the drag book that I did, I became friends with Dina Martina, who's one of my favorite, really out there drag queens, performance artists, kind of just this brilliant mind and deranged. And then with Disco, my new book, Corey Day, who is not maybe the name recognition may not be there, but she was the lead singer of Dr. Buzzard's original Savannah band, that song Cherchez la Femme, and really an early disco architect. And I hit it off with her so well that I was like, we're going to be pals. And so I text her and stuff, and I've kept in touch with her. And I'm not one to usually do that, but there was no going, once I met this woman, there was no going back. It was like, no, I need this woman in my life. So we've stayed. And also at the first signing, she bought 8 copies of the book to give away. And it's a $55 book. I was like, I love you, lady. It's like, this is amazing.
$55 is not that much for a holiday present. If you really love your friends,
if you did
buy Disco.
You buy this book, you definitely would buy Disco.
You love your friends $55 worth, don't you?
And they're cheaper if you go on to that evil site that we buy things late at night from, and they're there the next day. And that we shall not mention their name, Amazon. But it is what it is. But yeah, it was fun, and I got to meet. That's what I mean. People. Part of you does these books for altruistic reasons, because you want to share your enthusiasm for something, whether it's disco or the Golden Girls or the Love Boat or drag. But it's also that you have something to say about it and can bring something to the party that's original. And also for your selfish reasons, that you're dying to meet these people and learn more about it from them firsthand, as opposed to just reading about it yourself, or just being the spectator. You really get to sort of go into your TV, go into your radio, and hear and see and meet the people who made an art form or made a project or a genre or whatever that you have tremendous respect for. Speaking of, for me, and you're probably the same way, you do these things because you're like, you want to say, this deserves more respect than you're giving it. You should know about this. These people are really talented, and you're kind of not taking it as seriously as you should, and you need to. So
I do feel that way about the Love Boat. I mean, I didn't feel that I needed to justify Will and Grace at the time, because it was on the air. It was a huge hit. Everyone knew it was the first show created to have LGBT characters. So I didn't need to tell anybody who was at all in on the know that this was an important show. That was a given. So that was an easier way.
But it was with Golden Girls. You certainly did.
Golden Girls, I did have to do that. And I think, but even so, by the time Golden Girls Forever came out in 2016, I think that there were more people who got that already.
But not like now. Now it's an industry.
No, but in 2004, it was really a struggle. By 2016, I think it had grown enough that some people knew. With Love Boat, I think that Love Boat, at least when I started researching the book, was still a punchline, and it might still be today. But I think that people don't appreciate, what a huge phenomenon it was in its day in the era of 3 networks. And it was on Saturday night, and it was escapist television that would routinely get like 60% of the people watching TV watching it. It was just, a huge phenomenon, and that it was a cultural ambassador. It brought the world into our living rooms, and it brought American characters and actors abroad. But really, the thing that I want to preserve most about it is what a time capsule it was of performances and performers, because it was situated just by the decades that it was running in, the 70s and 80s, in this time when 2 generations or more than 2 generations were crossing like ships in the night, where the old timers from the 20s and 30s movies, from the golden age of Hollywood, many of whom were still alive and wanted to do some work and keep up their insurance, or maybe just be seen again on the screen, and they knew that the Love Boat would make them look great with great hair and makeup. And they would cross paths with some of the people who were in their teens and 20s then and are now some of the biggest stars in the world. And you could have them on the same episode. And so it's this weird pop culture mixing bowl fever dream of people showing up together. But it also is a great time capsule, because it has captured performances by Ann Miller and Della Reese and Ethel Merman and Carol Channing. And that's in one episode. Then, with Ginger Rogers singing in another one. And some of these people.
The meeting of Lana Turner and Ricky Martin is on the Love Boat.
Yes, exactly. That's a great example. Thank you. Of generations.
That's the Linda Pearl episode.
That's the Linda Pearl episode. And
that's what we call it. We don't call it the Ricky Martin episode.
That was Menudo, not just Ricky. Ricky Martin was like 2 feet tall. I mean, he was like Menudo.
He was, like 14. That's an incredible example, because it's set on a real cruise. So this cast really did get to bond with each other. If they shot on the soundstage, sometimes they wouldn't even really meet very much. But when they went on real cruises, they really went on real cruises together and got to know each other. And so, there's an episode where Lana Turner, not to spoiler alert, however 30, 40 years later, Lana Turner's pretending to be a grandmother, and she really is a lonely old lady. And she meets up with Menudo, who are playing, I don't know if remember if they're actually playing Menudo or they're just playing a singing group or a soccer group. I don't even know what their bond was. But she's teaching them how to play soccer. And they're like, wow. I mean, because, old ladies who in real life at that time were frail and had trouble walking are usually soccer coaches to young Latin boys, because young Latin boys usually know very little about soccer.
But you also know that all the soccer scenes were cut out of Imitation of Life.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, all of Lana's soccer scenes in that Douglas Sirk.
She was one hell of a goalie, and with that updo that was lacquered, that she could really do a header. But
she kept the balls out.
Well, yeah, she was great. I forgot about that. That's true. So my favorite thing about that with the Love Boat is that I wanted to, of course, get quotes from all these people who were on the Love Boat for the book. And I wanted to talk to Ricky Martin, who's, of course, always very busy. Sometimes it's hard when the people are now the huge stars because they don't have time anymore to talk, to reminisce. But I was at a television critics convention panel for the Versace, the American Crime Story Versace, and when Ricky was playing Versace's boyfriend, and Antonio. And so I'm sitting in the
accent.
I'm sitting in the audience of the press conference, and I had tried a few times to contact Ricky's publicist, and we hadn't been able to set anything up. But I knew that at the end of the press conference, all of the critics they call it a scrum. Everybody just gathers around the talent with their recorders, their tape recorders in their face, and tries to throw in a couple extra questions before the talent walks off stage. And so after the press conference was over, I joined the scrum around Ricky, and I managed to catch his publicist's eye. And I said, can I just, after these people ask their scrum questions, can we just pull him aside for a minute and I can ask him about the Love Boat? I just need a quick quote. And she said, okay. So I got my brief moment alone with Ricky. And what I had been noticing all through the press conferences is just how tough he looked. You know, he's hot, and he looked really hot in like a bear way or a biker way. He had the beard.
Leather guy.
Looked like a leatherman. He's wearing like a leather outfit, like the beard, and he just looked really butch and tough and intimidating. And so I get him backstage, and I have my moment with him, and I said to him, Ricky, I need to ask you about the Love Boat. And before I could say anything, he clutched the pearls like this, and he went, oh, I got to work with Lana Turner. And I thought, oh, that is great. You know,
big bottom.
Well,
anyway,
yeah. It wasn't just that he cleaned out. I love that he cleaned out, but it was also that he had an appreciation. He was only a little kid, and he said at the time he didn't know who she was, and I understand. He grew up in Puerto Rico. He was a kid watching old Lana Turner movies, but I love that now he has such an appreciation for it and is so proud that he can look at that clip of himself opposite Lana Turner in a scene. That's pretty amazing.
He can play soccer from Lana Turner.
He learned to play. Everybody learns.
You go to the best. You go to the best when you want to learn something.
How do you think Sarah Jane learned that play soccer?
I'm sure, yes.
It wasn't from her mother. She was ashamed of her mother. She learned it from
Lana Turner. Between Colucci movies. We're just going to sit here and go down a Douglas Sirk rabbit hole. I'm sorry.
No, it's amazing. I actually, because I just interviewed Linda Pearl, so I just watched that episode. Like a little cross-dressing Linda Pearl dressed up as a man.
Cross-dressing Linda Pearl to prove a feminist point about getting hired as equally as a man. But did Linda tell you the fun stuff about Lana Turner and who was the other diva in that episode who was playing them? Oh, Ann Baxter. Did she tell you about Lana Turner and Ann Baxter?
No, it spilled the beans.
So they both were on this cruise, and Lana made it a point of coming to dinner just a little bit late and making a grand entrance. And so, you know, everybody's waiting on her. They're all sitting at dinner, and Lana comes in and, oh, darling, I'm so sorry I'm late. And she said you could see that did not sit very well with Anne. So before dessert was finished being served, Anne got up and made a grand exit. I'm sorry, but I have to leave. And she said that every night their entrances and exits got closer and closer together because they would outdo each other of who could come to dinner last and make the grand entrance and who could leave first and make the grand exit.
That's why we revere them today. We do. It's because they were that petty. That's why we love them. Yeah.
I am looking forward to your Love Boat book. I've had Isaac Gopher and Doc on the podcast.
Oh, great.
And I can't get Vicky. Vicky keeps saying no. So I love it. And anytime I'm interviewing someone, I always ask them about their time on the Love Boat. And you learn, like you just mentioned, like some people actually get to go on a cruise, and most of it's a soundstage, which is like it's like finding out Santa's not real when you find
what? It's December. Take that back.
What a great time to drop that spoiler alert, Jeff. Thanks.
Sorry, Frank.
Who's going to bring my disco book to all the good boys and girls if Santa doesn't do it? I guess you'll have to buy it online. Okay, sorry.
No, let's I mean, we've talked, I mean, as Jim taking up most of it, let's talk about
Oh,
your
it's
disco
okay.
book.
No, I mean,
Okay.
I'm just furniture. It's fine. It's okay. I'm an
No,
overstuffed
you've
couch.
been all right. Well, so let's just all right. So the cute guide to the Golden Girls and Golden Girls Forever. But now let's say like the brand new, it just came out. Disco, music, movies, and mania under the mirror ball by
You
Frank.
stuck the dismount. Thank you for saying the subtitle perfectly. I can give you a good segue here. Jim and I both interviewed Donna Pescow for our books on the same day. And so I did an hour with her about Saturday Night Fever. And then I was like, please hold Miss Pescow. And here's Jim to talk about the Love Boat. And then he talked to her about her uh, appearances on the Love Boat. So yeah, there was crossover.
Well, we were both trapped in the 70s doing the research
And it
for
was
this
fun.
book. And so it was not only was it fun, but we had a lot of overlap. There were a lot of times that there were people who both did a disco thing and were on the Love Boat. And there were a lot of times I was interviewing people about the Love Boat, and it would come up, oh, you know, when I used to go to 54 back in the 70s, and I'm like, please hold for Frank DeCaro. You know, so
There was and there was one time where I couldn't go to an event because I was coughing so much, I think.
you thought you had COVID.
I thought I had COVID and I didn't, but I didn't go. And I thought, well, it's not like he's going to talk to Cher. Of course he talks to Cher.
It was Carol Burnett's 90th birthday party special taping of that. And yeah, Frank was like, if you happen to be able to talk to Cher, because
it was a big as if. And yet,
ask her about
roller skating. She would take over a roller rink in Reseda out in the valley in LA. And she would invite all these celebrities, and they would all go to Reseda, which is the strangest place to invite
it's like
celebrities.
a random suburb.
It's a random suburb. But they would all go, and it was like, if you could get on that list, it was a huge thing. And by word of mouth, it became this crazy roller disco version of Studio 54, where celebrities were on wheels. And so, but he talked to, I said, ask her about that.
So back to the taping of the Carol Burnett special. A lot of times at these things on red carpets, there's not enough time for the talent to talk to every reporter who's there. In the beginning, they were pretty good about getting everybody to come down the carpet. So I did talk to Carol and Julie Andrews, and already my day was made, of course. But Cher was toward the end, and there were some celebrities who were either running out of time or just didn't want to bother talking to everybody, and they would skip past some of us, and that was getting annoying. Cher, they were trying, the handlers were trying to skip Cher past some of us, saying we're running out of time, and Cher insisted, no, I'm going to talk to everybody who wants to talk to me. And she talked to every single one of us, maybe only for one question's worth because there wasn't time. But when she came to me, I said, Cher, I know we're here for Carol. This is going to be the most random question you get asked in a long time. Can you tell me about taking people roller skating in Reseda back in the 70s? And she wasn't nonplussed at all. It was like, oh, yeah. So, and she just told me the whole story about how they would go it was disco roller skating in Reseda. It was hilarious.
And one of the people who would go there with her was Wesley Ewer, who's from Land of the Lost. He was the heartthrob from Land of the Lost. This is where my pop culture brain explodes. You know, it's like I talked to him about it. They said, oh, yeah, Cher and I used to go and do that. And it just would be like any sentence that, oh, yeah, Cher and I, and you mean Cher as in Cher, to me is a mind-blowing thing to have someone say. But he was telling me about it as well. And so now every time we see a sign that says Reseda, we go, hey, it's Reseda. Gotta go to Reseda. You know? So we do bad Cher impressions while we're driving past them.
So two things. One is to tie in Will and Grace and Cher. I just saw the clip of Jack Hayes when he's talking to Cher, but he doesn't know he's talking to Cher.
If I could turn back town.
Sound like this town.
Brilliant.
And then she slaps him at the end. That is so great. And then
Cher has a Golden Girls connection. Do you know about this?
I do, but why don't you share it with everyone?
Well, not only did Estelle play Sonny Bono in one episode, and did Sonny Bono? They played Sonny and Cher actually. She and Dorothy played Sonny and Cher in a costume contest or mother-daughter contest. Plus, Sonny Bono appeared on the show as himself. So those are two connections. But the third connection is that Cher. It was found out by the producers of the show. I don't know who told them. I doubt it was Cher herself, but it was probably someone associated with her. That Cher, back in the VCR days, liked to tape the show and then watch it when she was on her treadmill. And so they heard Cher as a fan. So, oh my God, Cher as a fan, let's get Cher on the show. So they said a couple of times they reached out with story ideas or characters, and they wouldn't hear back, or they'd hear back no. The scheduling was getting hard. And they ended up writing this character for Cher, and I'll tell you who played it. They ended up playing it in a minute. And it was Dorothy's sister-in-law, the one who was married to her cross-dressing brother, Phil. And just they wrote it for Cher, and then they wrote it for Cher, and Cher never showed up. I don't know if that means they thought they had booked her and she didn't show up, or whether she just didn't answer the phone when they called. I still don't know what that means. But that's how dedicated they were to having Cher in this role. They really thought they were going to have her. And at the end, as I said, they said Cher never showed up. I don't know what that means. But Brenda Vaccaro ended up playing it. And so everybody remembers Brenda in that role, and she was great. But one time at Gay Days Disneyland, I was on a panel talking about the Golden Girls. And when I told that story, like 300 men in the audience all went, and did the clutch the pearl thing.
He said, you know who was originally supposed to play that role? And the audience is like, waiting. And he had Cher. And the whole room, you could watch the wallpaper get peeled off the walls.
There was such a collective gasp.
Yes, the inhale was pulling wallpaper off the walls. It was shocking to see gay men in unison like that. It was deranged. It was and everybody laughed afterwards, because we all were caught up in our own, oh my God, I'm so gay. And every man in the room who laughed, who gasped, burst into hysterics. We are so, Jesus, we're gay. It was a very communal bonding moment for that audience.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm saying is Cher is my lucky charm for every book that I write. She's got some connection to everything.
She's in my drag book. Yeah. She's in my disco book. Cher is everything.
She just didn't do the love book. She didn't do the love book. But Sonny did.
Okay, so there's a Bono or an almond somewhere in every one of our books. Yeah.
So not to blow your mind about Wesley Ewer, but I have a picture with me, Wesley, Kathy Coleman, and Philip Paley, who played Chaka, in a raft.
Yes.
From the Comic-Con.
Who do you think you're dealing with? We have one too.
I know. I was hoping you'd say that. It's the greatest. When I was interviewing Wesley and he says, "Oh, we do this," I'm like, it became my life mission to get that photo. It's and I come home and I go to my wife. I go, look, and this cost me $150, and she's like, "What?" And I'm like, "No, you don't understand. That's not good. That's a great price."
I think you need to do wife pricing. I always say that you do parent pricing and you lie how much it was. I think you need to come to your wife home to where and say, "Look, this cost me $10."
Yeah, you can't let them. There's certain things, no matter who you are, whoever you're married to, man, woman, whatever, there are certain things that you have to keep secret. And some people keep secret egregious things. Oh, I cheated on you on my business trip. And the rest of us are like, I bought another pop figure and you can't know about it. It's not quite as bad,
Things I don't know about them, but they get delivered to the apartment.
They do. And that damn Ring camera gives me
a Ring camera catches the guy putting the box down on the stoop.
But at least it's not, oh, I cheated on you. At least it's just, oh yes, and there's another piece of vinyl that needs to live with us now.
So Frank, disco. I guess I could ask the same thing about drag. Your book, Drag, Combing Through the Bigwigs of Show Business, both published by Rizzoli.
Rizzoli's good. They're so sweet. I like working with them.
So how did you pick these particular, coming hot off Dead Celebrity cookbooks? How did you pick
you mean
these
going
two
from
to
one
dive
ridiculous
into?
idea to another? Is that what we're saying?
No,
the Dead Celebrity cookbooks were a lot of fun because I had when I was working at the radio station at Sirius XM, I had interns, and I never had interns before, and they were so young and they didn't know what the hell I was talking about. I could have been talking Mandarin Chinese and they would have understood as much. They didn't know any of the references I was making, and I thought a lot about legacy and why I wanted to keep people's memory alive in a way that was funny and sweet and stuff. So that's how they came about. When I was looking for something else to do, someone, an editor at Rizzoli said, I think there needs to be a book on drag, and I think you should do it. And I thought, me, I'm not a drag queen. Why would I want to do this? And the times I have played a drag role in a web series or something, I look like one of the Far Side ladies. You know, I mean, it's not exactly glamorous. So I started thinking about it, and I realized that I had had a front row seat to the most important drag of the last half of the 20th century. I was at Wigstock when it was new in the East Village, when that whole scene was coming on. I had seen Jim Bailey and Charles Pierce and followed the careers of Charles Bush and Lipsinka. And I'd seen Flip Wilson talk about Geraldine. I'd seen Milton Berle in drag, you know, in a performance. Probably the last time he did drag in person. So I was kind of there for a lot of it. And so I was like, I am the right person to do this book. So I did that book. And then someone that I was interviewing in a podcast situation said, one of the drag performers said, you know, we're always the parsley and we're never the main dish. We're always the handful of glitter thrown on at the end. But not taken particularly seriously. And you're doing that. And they kind of started to cry. They got a little weepy over it, over being taken seriously. And someone said, well, that's what you do best. You show respect to people who deserve it, but aren't getting it. And you kind of shine a light where it should have been shown all along. But now you're saying, no, you need to pay attention to this. So when I was looking for something else to do, I thought, well, that is what I do best. So I thought, well, what other topics do I love that deserve to be taken more seriously? And disco presented itself. And I'd loved it as a kid, never stopped loving it, even though I loved punk, I loved new wave, I loved, you know, EDM, I love, you know, I've gone back to loving the American songbook and you know, vocal jazz. So, you know, I like so much stuff, but I thought disco got such a bad rap and the whole disco sucks thing. And then I started to see, particularly what galvanized it for me was the Bee Gees documentary, How Do You Mend a Broken Heart? And they showed footage of the disco demolition night in 1979 in Chicago, where people were invited to bring records by disco artists to be blown up between two games. And it resulted in this riot, and it was like this toxic masculinity on display. And it reminded me of a MAGA rally. And I thought, oh God,
it was also racist because a lot of the albums people were bringing weren't even disco albums. They just were albums by Black artists.
Yeah. And someone in the documentary said it was a racist, homophobic book burning. And I thought, okay, I really have to do disco now. And I learned that disco was a watershed moment for people of color, strong women, and the queer community. And we were sort of sold a bill of goods that disco was dead, when in fact it was just morphing into house music and laying the bedrock for hip hop and electronic dance music, and that it deserved its place on the continuum of American music. And was not this aberration or this awful, you know, funny looking cousin we don't talk about. It was as much a vibrant part of the music scene. And so I wanted to do all of that. And then I just started researching it and finding the disco divas and others who wanted to talk to me. And it was exciting to get to meet them. Some of them were, Gloria Gaynor was, when I called her people, they said, oh yeah, Gloria said, just call her. Here's her number. And you're like, I love you, Gloria. So that was great. Others, you had to really sort of cajole and chase a little bit, but they made it worth it when you finally did catch up to them. So that was very fun. And I also got to do something that the other disco books didn't do previously. And there have been a lot of disco books, but they've kind of not embraced the pop culture kitsch of it all. And that's my favorite sort of thing. The campier, the better. So I'm kind of the first one to look at disco on television. and like very special disco episodes of The Jeffersons or WKRP or Barnaby Jones. Buddy Ebsen, is 1,000. He's doing The Hustle, and Charlie's Angels, and all these classic TV shows that had disco episodes. And also, I identified a disco canon of movies where it's not just the big three: Saturday Night Fever, Thank God It's Friday, and Can't Stop the Music, the Village People movie. It's 17 others that are, many of which are so bad they're wonderful. And you have to sort of have the gene for appreciating that, where you can say, I didn't make Jim watch them because he does not follow. When I said to him, he said, well, how was Skate Town USA compared to Roller Boogie? And I said, well, Roller Boogie would have been better if it was worse. And I said, but Skate Town USA was worse than Roller Boogie, which of course made it better. And he's looking at me like you're out of your mind.
No, I get that. Please don't write a book about the Love Boat.
No, I know you get it. No, I know, but that's not your favorite thing necessarily. But I'm like, the worse it is, the cheesier it is, the more I'm like, I would much rather watch, what's it, Jennifer or whatever? Yeah. It was like a bargain basement version of Carrie, and there's a part of it set in the same disco that's in Thank God It's Friday. And I was like, oh my God, she has power over snakes, many of which seem to look rubber, but nevertheless, she has power over snakes. And and Skate Town USA, because it's worse than Roller Boogie, is so much better than Roller Boogie. And I came in, he said, well, what was it like? And I said, Flip Wilson owns a roller disco. His mother is Geraldine, his drag character. His father is Billy Barty, who played the Firefly on the Bugaloos. Okay, little person. And I was like, and you don't think I'm going to love this movie? I mean, it was like exactly my kind of movie, because it's just like, that can't really be the cast. It's like, no, that's the, and I think Jan Brady is in it, and Ron Palillo, Horshack is in it. And it's the screen debut of a very sexy Patrick Swayze. That has everything you need in a movie. It's like, hooray for important films, but I'll take Skate Town USA over any Best Picture Oscar winner, for enjoyability. So.
Well, Thank God It's Friday has a young Jeff Goldblum and
Deborah Winger.
Deborah Winger is in it? Deborah Winger, and then Donna Summer gets her Oscar, and then
she didn't get to keep the Oscar. Paul Jabara got the Oscar, and she was mad. They do jokes about she in the book. I have an interview with Donna Summer that I did in 1999, and she talked to me. She said, "Well, he gets to keep it, but I want it for him." It's like, so I like that, but it's true. I mean, you don't have Donna singing it; it's just another song, but.
I don't know why this popped in my head, but when you're talking about loving things that are horrible, all I kept thinking of is the Paul Lynde Halloween special. Have you seen?
It's the Paul Lynde Halloween special, and you want to explain this to young people, and I say you have to understand it was Paul Lynde who was the center square on the Hollywood Squares game show. And flamingly gay, but didn't talk about it, but just this bitter old queen. So he's the star of the show. Then you get Florence Henderson, the mother from the Brady Bunch. Then you add Witchy Poo from the Saturday morning show that warped people of my generation, called H.R. Pufnstuf. Then you get the Wicked Witch of the West from the original Wizard of Oz, Margaret Hamilton. Then you add in Pinky Tuscadero from Happy Days, who was Fonzie's girlfriend. And then the band Kiss. And you put them all in a special, and you make them sing Disco Lady. Okay? So that's why people who are between 50 and 65 now are warped out of their minds, because that's the crap we were watching when we were growing up. And I said, well, yeah, there are some crossovers now. When Lady Gaga was with Tony Bennett, I said, but you'd have to do Lady Gaga, Tony Bennett, and then add in Carrot Top and Slipknot. It's just like you'd have to put it all in one special for it to be as weird. And Hoda Kotb, just throw them together. That's what it would be like now. You'd be like, well, that makes sense. you sing disco, this group, it's like, okay. So yeah, it was a weird, the 70s were weird, whether it was the Love Boat or the disco era, they were weird and wonderful. And it was the just say yes decade. And, it was way more fun than the just say no decade of the 80s. I'll tell you that.
So, Frank, in addition to your illustrious career, which also includes working for The Daily Show,
Yes.
movie critic, you also worked at in my hometown, the Detroit Free Press and the Detroit News. So, in Michigan,
I did. Detroit News was just a blip because I got mad. I did something you do when you're young. Somebody didn't like a story I'd written, who was, I don't know if it was the editor-in-chief or the publisher, whoever, some big person. I got a note saying, why are we not doing this? And the story that they sent me that we should be doing was the most boring thing ever. And I'd been doing this stuff that honestly was a little out there. And as an old fart, I get it. But anyway, I was the point in my career where you already had someone saying, if you ever get tired of working at the Free Press, call me and you will work for me the next day. So I did. I got mad. I called the woman and I said, hi, they're making me furious. When do you want me to start? And so I just gave my notice. Oh my God, were they mad. But I love Detroit. I had a really good time in Detroit because I had been in Colorado for 9 months. I took the first job that was offered to me when I graduated at Northwestern in Chicago. And it was in a small town in Colorado. It's 1984. It took longer to drive to a Woody Allen movie than to see the Woody Allen movie. And I was like, I got to get out of here. And so I answered an ad in a magazine for a fashion writer, and I got the job. I was 23, and I was suddenly a columnist at like the 7th largest newspaper in the country. And I was at the Free Press for 3 years, and then 3 months at the News, and then I moved to New York. But I love Detroit is a really fun town, and in those days it was like, downtown Beirut. I mean, it was it was rough in the 80s.
You'd love it now.
Fun.
It's amazing now.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. But it's like, and I got some of the people I interviewed at the Free Press about house music are in the disco book. So it all comes full circle. The Donna Summer interview I did in '99 is in the disco book because it had never seen the light of day. And you can't steal from you're not plagiarizing if it's something you wrote 40 years earlier. I don't think so, or 35 years earlier. So I quoted some of the guys that I'd interviewed in 1987 about house music and techno in Detroit. And everything they said then was as right on about it as could be. So I was lucky to sort of have that. And, but I almost had forgotten I'd done that. When you do this long enough and you've been writing long enough, you'll be like, did I just like them or did I interview them? You kind of, you don't always remember when you've been doing it so long, if it's fandom, or if they were one of the people who came on the radio show, or if there was a column you wrote back in the day, or you'll see somebody on TV and it's like, oh, I auditioned with them for something. It's when you've had a long enough career, and your memory gets shorter and shorter. It's it's kind of amazing how many people you cross paths with.
I want 500 words on the Daily Show, but first you opened. You spent 4 years opening for Lisa Lampanelli. I spent 1 weekend, 3 days in Livonia,
Did you get
Michigan.
hazard pay? We deserve hazard pay for opening for Lisa Lampanelli, because if she didn't kill us, the audience might have. It was rough out there. But no, I had a great time, and I adore her. But I do think hazard pay, I used to always joke about, if they would be aghast at something, I would look at the audience and say, do you realize who is coming out here next? I said, do you understand? Have you met Lady Dracula? And they would laugh. And because it's like anything I would say was barely as dirty as what she was going to. I mean, I went pretty blue, but still, it was. Did you work blue, as they say? Were you dirty in your act, or were you pretty clean?
I think I was mostly clean. I was going first, so it's like, you gotta. I guess you got. I don't know. It was. I don't remember what. I don't even remember. But like, I mean, I don't remember.
I was doing fisting. I was doing fisting jokes. So
I don't know if I was doing fisting jokes. It's comedy's funny. It's like one person goes, "You're so dirty," and another person goes, "You're not dirty at all," right? So, the things I remember about Lisa Lampanelli is, one, we had to give up our seats. There was definitely usually a place where the comedians would sit because she literally sold out every seat of every show.
So talented and so popular.
Yeah, and the other thing that I remember, and I would say about Lisa Lampanelli is, well, she went on to do HBO special. At the time, she was, I think, uber famous because she had said something like, was she the one one of the roasts? I think the Chevy Chase roast, she had blown up or something like that. And so she went on to get HBO specials, probably because we lifted her up. I do regret she gave me her email. She goes, "You're funny. You could write jokes for me." And I ignored that, and I shouldn't have. And but seeing her live, like, you have to see Lisa Lampanelli live. For some reason, I always thought like watching her DVD or like even on her HBO, which she's so great, but it's like there's something missing. There's something about the energy, and like you don't get mad at her because she's one of those people that can say everything she says, and it's just like this character, right? And it's like you're okay with it because she's hitting everyone. Right. It's like she doesn't leave any nationality, color, anything. Anyway.
I mean, she's not that racist. No. Nobody's that racist. No.
But
no, she's a sweetheart and really loves everybody. But it's funny. But yeah, there's an electricity in the. I felt like it was a 4-year masterclass, and I mean, I'm sure there are some situations. If I have to learn dialogue, I get nervous. But if I have to just go, if somebody said, go host this, I mean, I've had situations where like, oh my God, you have to go on and moderate the panel. The guy left, I had it happen at a game show convention. And then there was it didn't just, they were like, they can't find the moderator. So I just ran and it did. But there's not an ounce of nerves anymore because of working with Lisa. I mean, she's just like, you're smart. You know what you're doing. It goes back to the Ethel Merman line I like, where she said, "You paid the money for the tickets. You're the ones who should be nervous." The audience should be nervous, not the performer. But yeah, no, I don't get nervous about hosting kinds of things at all anymore, and that all goes to Lisa. But you mentioned before about the Daily Show. The Daily Show was truly the happiest with my career that I ever was, because I was surrounded by the most spectacularly talented comedy minds. There's a cast photo from I've been there a while, and it's Louis Black, Mo Rocca, Ed Helms, Rob Corddry, Jon Stewart, Stephen Colbert, Stephen Carell, and his wife Nancy Walls, who's a brilliant talent in her own right. And that's and me, and it's like I'm the who the hell are you, in the photo, but it's just to have been working with them and have had, I mean, we did one special that not only had B. Arthur in it, but it was narrated by Colbert. It's like, who has a show where you're the star and Colbert is the narrator, in your past? I mean, I'm a very lucky person to have started in television at the top. There was nowhere to go but down. That's what I tell people. When you start at the Daily Show, there's nowhere to go but down. Anyway, but yeah, it was pretty great. 6.5 years. It was like 150 or 170 appearances and stuff, and yeah, it's pretty wild. What a weird! I've been lucky enough that I've had so many different versions of my career that it's almost like things happen to other people. I mean, I was a fashion editor for years, and so it was like I was young, I had hair, I was thin, and I was the fashion editor, and I was going to parties at Donatello's apartment in Milan and the Palazzo Visconti and whatever. And meeting, I met Yves Saint Laurent. That just sounds like we're in a time capsule, but that whole era of talents was coming on. Johnny Versace was helpful with my first book and getting a message to Elton John. It's like it was just a whole other life. And then the years doing the Daily Show, it's like that was a whole other thing, and the Lisa part of it. And I've been lucky. I'm not bored with my career ever. It's just always now. It's just a matter of thinking, well, what the hell do I do next? Reinvention is easier when you're younger, but magically something appears and you become the disco guy, or whatever is going to be next. And you
disco
should always,
guy's not too bad. That's pretty good.
No, it's good. No, but I was going to say you should always do something. I think I've been lucky enough to and you're the same way. We bring our enthusiasm to what we do in a very natural way. It's not fake enthusiasm for something. It's, no, I really love disco and you should love it too. And you really love the Golden Girls and Will and Grace and All in the Family, and I really do love drag. I say in all the world, I can attest. I think I love the drag queens best. That's what I always say. I do. I love drag queens. I think they're some of the funniest performers, and I love them. So it's easier to do work when it's just sharing your enthusiasm and justifying your enthusiasm, justifying all those records you bought as a teenager, or all those hours you spent in front of that TV, or why the DVDs are going to fall over one day and kill you because the stacks are so high, that kind of thing. Your work, you sort of do it to justify your passions. Do you agree? Or
Yes,
okay, yeah.
So, Jim, let me ask, what was it like? Which I'm sure the answer is amazing, but like working with Norman Lear on your book, All in the Family, the show that changed everything.
Yes, the show that changed television.
The show, All in the Family, the show that changed television. There you go.
It was amazing, and I was flattered because I was asked to work with Norman on the book, and I was in the middle of writing the Love Boat book. But when someone again says, "Hey, do you want to write a book with 98-year-old legend Norman Lear?" You say, "Yes, I do." And what Love Boat book? I'll do that later. Strike while the iron is hot. And the only
or strike while the subject's alive.
Yeah,
that's the
subject's alive. Well, that's the irony too, that I was approached in January of 2020. Do you want to do this book with Norman? Of course I do. And I have these fantasies of Norman and I are sitting there passing papers back and forth. Hey, what about this? Whatever, like really working, side by side physically. And then, of course, COVID hit in March, and we didn't actually get started on the book until September of 2020. At which point I was like, when you have a 98-year-old subject, you don't really delay by 8 months for no reason. But they did, because Norman was so busy. And so we did most of our writing, most of our interviewing together on Zoom. Although I did have a couple of days where I did get that fantasy come true. There was a day, COVID, I think, had taken a little bit of a dip by like November of 2020, I guess. 2020, yeah. And they said, Norman has 50 file boxes at least of All in the Family documents and photos that are stored off-site. But we can have them pulled and brought to his house if you want to go over there and go through them. And yes, I do. And so
I was like, "Do you need an assistant?" He said, "Yes, I do."
So I brought Frank, and we had a lovely day with a nice catered lunch at Norman's house where we sat and went through more than 50 file boxes of documents that had not literally not been seen since they were put in that box 50 years ago, because nobody's gone through this stuff.
It was like TV guides that the spine wasn't broken and they're 50 years old. It was like I was in pig heaven, even though it wasn't my book.
And documents from network and letters from fans and photos that had never been seen. It was amazing. And then afterward, we sat with Norman and kind of talked about what we'd found and said
far
apart because they were protecting Norman. So we sat on what he had a long porch in this house, and it was an outdoor porch. So we sat at one end of the porch at the round table, and he sat at the far end of the other end of the porch, and we shouted, "Hey Norman, what about this?" So we had our day with him from 20 feet away.
That's amazing.
Was thrilling.
It's incredible. And, hearing those stories from the horse's mouth, literally, I mean, I cannot say how thrilling it was for me, because it's not some of the stories I'd heard before, because I've heard him being interviewed before, but to hear things and be able to ask him about it directly. And this is the man who was there, and the man is now 99 while we're writing this book. I mean, wow. That's a once in a lifetime opportunity. And as I said, that's why when you get asked if you want to do that, if you ever have a legend ask you if you want to do anything with them, and they say, "Are you busy?" Say, "Nope, I'm not busy. I'm all yours." It's worth it.
And it's weird, how we were saying about how we were trading off doing the disco book and the Love Boat book. How Norman is, of course, in the drag book because of his casting of the Beverly LaSalle character, the drag performer who faints in Archie's cab, and he gives her mouth-to-mouth resuscitation and then finds out it's a man, which is a hilarious thing. But they liked the character so much they brought her back twice more. And then when they killed her off as a victim of a hate crime, the only negative mail they got was, "How could you kill off someone we liked so much?" As opposed to, "Why are you putting a transvestite character on?" as they used to use that word back in the day. So it was, you made us love her and then you killed her. How dare you? So that was something I found out looking in those boxes, because it said negative mail, and the negative wasn't, "How could you put a transvestite character on TV?" It was, "How could you kill a transvestite character?" We loved her. So it was kind of interesting to know 50 years ago that people could be reached, and their better sides and their more tolerant, open sides could be reached.
And yet there were things that we were weirder about back then, because some of the negative mail was about, "How dare you discuss Edith going through menopause? I watched this with my daughter, and this is supposed to be a family show, and I was so embarrassed." They were really hung up on periods and menopause back then.
Oh, yeah.
Very, very disturbed by any mention of it.
One guy wrote a letter to Norman on the back of a Kotex box
that he typed. So he actually took a Kotex box, inverted it, put it in his typewriter, and then banged out a letter on the back of a Kotex box.
And mailed it to
Norman.
Not crazy at all.
Yeah, that's not crazy.
You never know what's going to trigger someone. Oh, my goodness. I know we could go on for 10 more hours, but this has been so much fun. You guys have so many stories. There's so much that you guys have done. I love everything. And so thanks for sharing all these stories with me.
Thank you for having us. This was so much fun.
And send people, if you would, to my Instagram. It's at Frank DeCaro Show. DeCaro, Frank DeCaro Show. And there's links to getting my books, but it's naughty. So don't open it in public.
Only Frank would give you a not safe for work link to find his book.
It's safe for work, but it depends on
How about go to Amazon and look for Disco Music, Movies, and Mania Under the Mirror Ball,
or Golden Girls Forever, or
and that way they don't have to deal with your not safe for work.
No, but you'll have so much fun on my dirty little Instagram.
I will put links to everything in the show notes when we release this. So don't worry.
It's not filthy, people. It's just naughty. Okay, it's naughty. Okay, that's all. Not always, but often. Okay, so it's my sense of humor, and people are like, "How can you do these dirty things and then write a cogent book about disco?" It's like, I don't know. Can't you be more than one thing? It's like my sense of humor is perverted, and my writing life is serious. It's and I'm a good cook in the kitchen. It's like it's you could be 5 things. Why not?
You're a quadruple threat. It's just you're everything. You're everything.
I keep cooking like you cook for Thanksgiving. We're all going to be quintuple threats.
We're going to be quintuple extra large if I keep talking. Oh, I was good. I was on it this Thanksgiving.
Nailed it.
As they say. So yes.
Well, thank you both so much. I appreciate you. And that's it.